Climbing down the old, rickety wooden ladder into the darkness, we soon arrived within the Dwarven castle's lower-level entry chamber, which, I presumed, would take us into the bowels of the ruins. Looking about, I could see that the chamber had been heavily damaged from above, to the point where I feared its collapse may be imminent. Worse, a haze of poisonous gas clung to the floor. I wasn't entirely sure what the poison might do to us, but there was little we could do to avoid breathing some of it. Fortunately, the amulet of slow poison that Slyvan had given us kept the poison from harming us too much, at least initially. I sense great sorrow here, Kartha whispered, looking about. It's as if the dwarves are all calling out in horror. I feel it too, Ariana added, a little frightened. Something terrible happened here. The last to descend the rotting wooden ladder, one of the steps suddenly broke and Sainairs fell a few feet, not far enough to hurt him but causing a commotion and churning up some of the gaseous poison clinging to the floor. Spread out, let's take a look around, Eswin ordered, intent on searching the small chamber for clues. The smaller 20 by 20 foot chamber was mostly empty. Several old and rotting weapon racks were here, a few worthless battle axes still secured within them. There was also half a dozen or so dwarven skeletons lying about, all of them dressed in heavy armor. Naturally, we weren't keen on inspecting the floor, lest we further expose ourselves to the gaseous poison there. Inspecting the skeletons a little more, it was clear they had not only died here but were killed in mortal combat. Hence, we were pretty sure these brave souls had given their lives in defense of their stronghold. Having searched the entry chamber and found little, I looked south where an open doorway led into what appeared to be a large hallway beyond. Suddenly, the ceiling began to rumble and Eswin ordered everyone to stand in place. The rumbling intensified and some dust precipitated from the ceiling. It felt as if the ceiling was about to collapse. The rumbling continued for a few more moments and then stopped. The worst seemed to be over. These ruins are unsound, Ariana commented. We can't stay here. What is that? Eswin whispered, pointing toward the doorway to the south. Materializing in the near darkness was some sort of apparition, like a wraith but appearing very much like a ghostly dwarven soldier. Its appearance sent a cold shiver down my spine. It was likely undead but something we hadn't encountered before. Dear Sisla, Sainairs uttered, horrified by the apparition. Is that a spectre? Kartha cried out, finishing his sentence. It's returned from the dead to finish what it started here. Indeed, we could see upon the ghostly being horrific wounds, as if the monster had just risen from its place of death to again defend the castle. A second one then appeared alongside the first, then a third. These monsters drain energy like a wraith, Sainairs responded, his eyes filled with terror. They'll attempt to drain us with each hit, so watch out. Without making a sound, the specters lifted their battle axes and rushed our party, their eyes crazed with a murderous vengeance. These monsters had arrived to destroy all of us. Doing the best we could against them, both Eswin and Ariana were nonetheless energy drained and once we destroyed the monsters, we had to use 2 of the restoration scrolls we found in Slyvan's home to restore both warriors. What wretched monsters! Eswin complained as he was magically restored. Pitiful ones, Kartha responded, saddened as well. The dwarves here died violent, unholy deaths. I fear we will encounter more of these. A moment later, the ceiling began to rumble again. This time, however, actual stone began to fall, the ceiling was collapsing. Recognizing the danger, Eswin ordered all of us to run south into the hallway beyond, lest the party be destroyed within the chamber's collapse. Racing into this long hallway, we just managed to outrun the collapsing entry chamber to the north, its destruction throwing large amounts of dust, debris, and poison into the air behind us. Worse, we were now completely cut off. We certainly wouldn't be exiting the ruins the same way we had entered them. Everyone all right? Redfern asked, holding a handkerchief up to his mouth to avoid breathing any more of the debris cloud raised by the chamber's collapse. Glancing about and noting that everyone appeared to be safe, I breathed a poisoned sigh of relief. Lucky that everyone was still alive. We now stood at the northern end of what appeared to be a grand hallway leading north to south. At one time the hallway was luxurious and grand, a testament to the proud and noble dwarves who lived here. Now, however, the corridor was a ghost of itself, dark and dusty and heavily damaged. We should do a quick search and make sure the way is safe, Eswin suggested. Looking about, we found little here, apart from a few more dwarven skeletons who apparently met their demise defending the hallway. Hence, the immediate area appeared empty but devoid of threats. Following the smaller hallway east, we quickly reached a point where the ceiling had completely given way, the resulting cave-in making further travel to the east impossible. Unfortunately, it appeared we had reached an empty dead end. Giving the area a quick search, we soon discovered some humanoid feet protruding from beneath the rocks and debris, an apparent victim of the ceiling's collapse here. Moving the larger rocks and such aside, we were soon able to pull the corpse out of the debris and give it a good search. We had found a female human thief, deceased for some time. While she didn't appear to possess anything of value, we did find a small, blood-stained diary which looked useful. If I had the patience to meticulously study the diary and discern its secrets within. While the dried blood had ruined most of the diary, an hour of study revealed that the thief had come to the ruins in search of treasure, only to find it haunted by the undead. Her notes included reference to the Dwarven King in his palace room far to the southeast and his presumed treasure that lay beyond, but that's about all we could discern. The area all but empty, our only recourse was to head back west. Heading west past the entry hallway, we entered a small antechamber, an apparent dwarven washroom that was complete with a crude commode, wash basin, and dresser. An opulent mirror hung on the far wall opposite us as well. As we approached, I eyed what looked like a dwarven woman and perhaps her younger sister step into the washroom, their backs to us and seemingly unaware of our presence. They didn't appear to be spirits or anything undead, just normal dwarves dressed as princesses. Lom Tora, look there, in the mirror. Red Fern pointed, his voice quite concerned. What do you see? Gazing into the mirror now just 20 feet away, it took a moment for me to recognize that the two dwarven lasses cast no reflection in the mirror, as if they weren't even there. They're vampires. Sainairs whispered back, fumbling for his holy symbol. A moment later, the two dwarves heard our approach, turned around and started to snarl, not welcoming us whatsoever. The hissing growls were not unlike an ill-tempered feral cat warning us to turn and leave at once lest we be attacked. Vampires, as in blood-draining undead with great strength? Eswin questioned, the monsters here hating our presence and about to attack. Don't let them bite you. Kartha fearfully called out. They drain energy levels, just like the specters we faced. As if on cue, the dwarven women leaped forward, attacking with an unnatural ferocity. At first it was hard to fight the monsters given their beauty and natural appearance. But after Eswin was nearly bitten by one, my heroes tore into the two vampires' spawn, quickly hacking them to pieces. The vampiric monsters put down, Sainairs and Kartha found some wooden debris nearby and drove stakes through their hearts, destroying the monsters forever. First the specters, and now these vampires, Red Fern commented, worried for us. I fear these ruins are infested with very powerful undead. I believe these were just vampire spawn, Kartha responded, unnerved. That likely means that an even more powerful vampire dwells here, he or she will be even harder to destroy. Looking about, I wondered how we could better prepare to find these deadly vampires. Recognizing the mirror here as a potential tool, I used the hilt of a dagger to smash into it, glassy shards falling into the wash basin and floor as my heroes initially watched in confusion. I then grabbed one of the remaining shards still attached to the mirror and wrapped one of my bandages around it so that its sharp edges wouldn't cut me. Of course. Sainairs nodded, approving of what I was doing. Vampires don't leave a reflection in a mirror, so we will know if we encounter more. Nicely done. With little else to do here, we decided to pass through the door the two vampires had just used and continue our exploration of the ruins to the south. Entering what was once a regal and impressive dwarven woman's bedroom, the area was now crumbling with rotting debris strewn everywhere amidst a large, unkempt bed, couch, dressers and a small chest. Resting on the floor in one corner were two wooden coffins, sized for an adult dwarf and perhaps a smaller child. Two additional coffins lay on the floor in the opposite corner. A thorough search of the relatively large chamber revealed a few things. First, all the coffins were empty but contained a thin layer of soil that had been disturbed recently, meaning that the coffins likely contained corpses recently. Second, while all the furniture was rotting and useless, the small chest was locked and not easily opened. Finally, we noticed a fine brown powder covering just about everything. Don't touch the powder, Red Fern warned after closely examining it himself. It's brown mold, and highly toxic. We should leave this chamber at once. Despite the brown mold, I knelt in front of the small chest and picked the lock, revealing a magical light crossbow inside. However, the brown mold spores further poisoned all of us. Had it not been for the amulet, the exposure would likely have been fatal. Taking the doorway leading east, we soon found ourselves standing about midway within the grand entry hallway, with a smaller corridor leading away to the east while the main hallway continued to the north and south. From our vantage point, we could see a faint reddish glow to the south where, we believed, another intersection lay. Beyond that, however, we saw nothing more here. While there was little to examine, my party decided to search the intersection anyway to see what we could find. Hence, I was surprised when Ariana pulled something from the dust and broken stone. Holding the item up into our light, Ariana had found some sort of delicate dwarven pendant, a beautiful silver chain containing a moderately sized ruby shaped like a heart. The jewelry looked expensive and I allowed Ariana to keep it, given that it was she who found it. Proceeding east, this chamber was likely a small study at one time, containing a variety of comfortable chairs, small tables, and bookshelves, all of which had been violently ransacked and thrown about as if a tornado had passed through. Hundreds of old books lay about as well, rotting in the moist, poisonous air. Searching the small study, we didn't find anything of significance or value. Hoping to at least find some information amongst the books, they were all too damaged to yield any secrets. So, unfortunately, the chamber appeared to be a waste of time. Tora, look at the condition of these books over here, Ariana called out from the far southeastern corner of the study. My party gathering around Ariana to review her findings, I noticed that dozens of the books appeared half dissolved, as if they'd been digested and then spat out. Out of the corner of my eye I suddenly detected movement in the dark shadows along the far eastern wall. Something black and viscous then leaped out toward us, surprising my party and landing an initial attack. A black pudding. Redfern warned, knowledgeable of such things. Our weapons won't do much to harm the beast. Amorphous creatures that live only to eat, black puddings inhabit underground areas like this throughout the world I knew, scouring caverns, ruins and dungeons in search of organic matter, living or dead. They attacked any creatures they encountered, lashing out with pseudopods or simply engulfing opponents with their bodies. They were also nearly immune to all weapon attacks, even magical ones. Having recently gained the fireball spell a short time ago, Redfern ordered the party to stand back and then blasted the monster, setting it afire. We then hacked and slashed at the burning creature, taking nearly 10 minutes to destroy it. Look. Ariana pointed toward the eastern wall. That pudding monster was concealing a surviving bookshelf. Sure enough, a small bookshelf containing several dozen old tomes still stood against the wall, damaged from decades of wear and neglect but readable nonetheless. These books may yield the clues we've come here for, Redfern announced, stepping over to the bookshelf. Let's spend some time going through them. My party in agreement, we spent the next several hours going through all the books. The books generally told the story of how the dwarves here all but ruled central Chageria for centuries, long before the Ultimates came to power. Over time, the dwarves continued to scoff at the growing power of the Ultimates, mocking them and refusing to show any respect. Once the Ultimates came to power and seized all Chageria for themselves, the dwarves still refused to even acknowledge them, convinced they were not a threat. The dwarves here refused to honor or even acknowledge the Ultimates, Eswin paraphrased, beginning to understand. And that arrogance got them all killed. The Ultimates would not suffer such disrespect, Redfern responded with a heavy heart. The dwarves here were likely more powerful for a time, but the potency of the Nemphrid can be quite strong. Eventually, the Ultimates became powerful enough to not just challenge the dwarves but defeat them, and in being disrespected, they showed no mercy. Turning at least some of them into undead in the process, Sainairs added, appalled. These dwarves need to be avenged. Retreating west again, we soon reached the far southern end of the grand hallway, standing before a large stone door, a reddish aura glowing all around it. In addition to the door, smaller corridors led away to the west and east. Is it locked? Kartha asked, nodding toward the door. Eswin tried the door, recognizing that it was extremely hot. Something beyond had made the stone of the door almost scalding to the touch. Conducting a quick search of the intersection here, we didn't find anything helpful, other than the door leading south and the two corridors leading away to the west and east. There simply was nothing else here. The southern door seemed unlocked, but the door itself was very hot to the touch. Hence, something even hotter must lie on the other side. Pushing the heavy stone door aside, strong heat from beyond struck us like a slap in the face. Immediately before us was a massive magma chamber, molten rock swirling below perhaps 50 feet down. It appeared that a vein of magma had pushed itself up into the far southern end of the ruins. Not only were we blocked from going any further south, but it looked like the entire ruin would soon be destroyed by the approaching magma. It appears we've arrived here just in time, Redfern summarized, staying in the back of the party to avoid the excessive heat. This entire dungeon will soon be swallowed by the magma here and utterly destroyed. The way south blocked by the magma chamber, our only option was to return north back to the southern end of the grand hallway beyond. Our options to either go west or east, we decided on west, reaching another bedroom moments later. Once a fine bedchamber, rot and decay had reduced everything here to decrepit junk, not unexpected. Doing a quick survey of the room, we first noticed a coffin lying on the floor opposite a once lavish bed, the coffin shaped to hold a full dwarven adult. Second, and much more surprising, we noticed that little dust had accumulated within the chamber and the floor appeared to have been swept recently. Hence, it appeared that someone was actually living here. Spending a little time to search the bedroom more thoroughly, we found the usual assortment of furniture, clothing, and knickknacks common to such a chamber. Again, nearly everything was decaying, but a few items seemed newer or in decent repair, suggesting that someone might actually dwell here. Peering into the coffin, however, it was quite empty. This coffin likely belongs to an actual vampire, Kartha suggested, somewhat unnerved. And I sense this one will be even more difficult to slay than the vampire spawn we faced. Where is this monster? Ariana asked, looking about. Not here, Eswin returned, his hand on his weapon. But it's probably not far, so stay alert. Departing the rotting bedroom and heading east, we soon passed through a rotting door along the southern wall and entered what looked to be a small living area, a place where a few dwarves could pass the time in leisure. Like everywhere else, the chamber had been ransacked and destroyed. However, some of the furniture had since been righted, the fireplace was ablaze and it looked as if someone had been caring for the room somewhat. It didn't take long for us to recognize that the room was occupied. Sitting in the far corner of the chamber with her back to us was a dwarven woman, dressed in very fine, perhaps regal, clothing and apparently knitting something as she softly hummed to herself. As we slowly approached, the dwarf remained seated with her back to us, calling out as if she already knew of our presence. My, you do cause quite the commotion, loud enough to wake the dead. Using the mirror shard I took earlier, I didn't see any reflection, she was a vampire. The dwarf put her knitting down, stood and turned to us, slowly and with precision, as if her movement had been rehearsed 1,000 times. Wearing an elaborate dress fit for a queen, the woman looked all of us over before engaging in conversation. I am Queen Glastrabelin, of the House of Greybelly, rightful rulers of all Chagoria. And who would you be? We're here to avenge all of you. Ariana heroically cried, surprising me somewhat. That is noble, the queen responded with a wry smile. We would want to be avenged, if we were still alive. Queen Glastrabelin, what happened to you and your kin here? Kartha asked, trying to change the subject. The dwarven woman frowned and looked away, angry and heartbroken. I tried to tell my husband, King Strovik, that the ultimates were a threat, that we needed to take the fight to them. But he wouldn't listen, insisting that the ultimates were nothing compared to us, that they would soon fade away. He was so wrong, and when the ultimates came, they didn't just sack our home and kill everyone. Queen Glastrabelin took a deep breath before continuing her story. They cursed us, transforming us into monsters of the night, rendering us with this wretched immortality and a hunger that can never be satisfied. Are you undead? Eswin asked directly, sorry for her condition but ready to put her down if need be. 'Tis a fate worse than death, the queen responded, a small tear sliding down her cold, lifeless face. We are on a quest to help destroy the ultimates, Redfern boldly stated, hoping that the cause would help curtail her pain. We will try to avenge you. I am afraid that will not be possible, Queen Glastrabelin replied, her face remaining sad. All of you have a different fate in store, I believe. And what is that? Eswin asked, his instincts warning him to prepare for combat. I haven't fed in nearly a year, I need sustenance. I shall drain all of you, and you will become my spawn for all eternity. Her story sad yet intense, my entire party couldn't help but look deeply into the queen's eyes. Moments later, both Ariana and Redfern stopped interacting and just stood there, apparently mesmerized by the queen and no longer able to act on their own. Indeed, the dwarven queen grinned, a lovely, heartfelt smile that was so hard to resist that I suddenly felt my only purpose in life was to offer my nourishing blood to her as well. Then, with several of us charmed, the vampire queen attacked. Possessing a scroll of remove charm, Cartha was able to break the queen's effect on Ariana, but Redfern remained charmed, offering his neck to the vampire, and forcing us to keep the queen away from Redfern for the duration of the battle. Despite not wearing any armor, Queen Glastravelin proved extremely hard to damage, drawing the combat out over many minutes. Worse, every time one of us looked directly into her eyes, she was able to potentially charm us again. Eventually, we wore the queen down, a fatal blow was struck and the vampire queen collapsed to her feet. Before we could do anything more, however, the queen's corpse suddenly faded into mist, disappearing without our party able to drive a stake through her heart. Where did she go? Eswin cursed, looking about. Back to her coffin. Cartha replied, pointing back to the west. And she will likely be fully healed again. The fight against the vampire apparently not over, we immediately raced back west into the rotting bedroom we had found an hour earlier. Returning to the rotting bedroom here, having already fought the vampire queen, we approached the coffin still lying atop the bed, weapons out and ready for anything. Peering into the coffin, we found the vampire queen, and she had been resurrected here. As we prepared a wooden stake to pierce the heart of the vampire queen and destroy her forever, the undead woman's eyes suddenly opened, and before we could attack her, she transformed into a large bat, leaping into the open ceiling of the bedchamber. Flying about for several long moments, we were further surprised when nearly a dozen more giant bats flew in from the east, circling the queen vampire as she descended and took her dwarven form again. Thinking quickly, Eswin set fire to the queen's coffin. Now with nowhere to return, the vampire screamed in wretched anger and attacked, along with her 10 giant bats. The giant bats had a wingspan of 15 feet and weighed about 200 pounds each, but they weren't much of a threat and we soon either killed or drove them away. The queen, of course, was just as difficult to battle a second time, but at least we knew what to expect and we made sure we didn't look her in the eyes. It took quite a while again, but the vampire queen finally went down and our party wasted little time in driving a final stake through her heart, destroying the monster forever. Still breathing heavily from the difficult battle, Cartha knelt beside the slain queen and said a soft prayer to herself, showing deserved respect to a dwarven woman who didn't deserve such a fate. Seeing this, Sainairs knelt beside Cartha and similarly uttered a simple prayer. "We will avenge these dwarves," Eswin finally said, breaking the silence. "I look forward to destroying every ultimate we find." All in agreement, Cartha and Sainairs climbed back to their feet, all of us ready to depart the grisly chamber. And that's a wrap of episode number 39, The Dwarven Ruins Part 1. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.